I kind of wanted to mention. I actually mentioned it last night on Twitter, I think, but March 13th, 2023. It's kind of bittersweet. I feel like this year because Hugh Neff was sort of really, and he's not allowed to run this year. In a lot of the older champions, and the Big Kennels don't have a footprint there. Dallas isn't in there, even though he's a younger musher. But Mitch, Jeff, Morton, who have had a big impact on the race, and not necessarily maybe themselves being the most competitive recently, but it feels a little bittersweet because the top three teams, there's pros and cons. They're all, I believe, all three of them are half native and half white. I'm not sure on that, so if I'm wrong on that. In terms of Ryan Reddington, Pete Kaiser, and Richie Deal, and not to make a big deal of it, but I think it's worth pointing out that you know that it's nice to see the native representation in the sport period, and they've been doing it for a long time, so this isn't something like, oh, it's a big surprise that they're in the top or anything like that, or in the front. And it's not something I think we need to focus on them being native, but I remarked looking at it, it's like it almost feels like, for the people who are really savvy and understand how it all works with the dog mushing, is it something where it's like the behind the scenes, the ecosystem of sponsors, businesses, race staff, race organization sort of tend to support that, because it is part of the history and part of the tradition of Alaska, and admittedly part of what Joe Reddington Sr. was trying to preserve. He wasn't trying to preserve people who got off a plane, what I mean, mushing the dogs, in a colonizer type mindset in the big business. But what I'm trying to say is, even with those three native mushers doing it, there is that colonizer, industrial, corporate aspect that supports them and enables them to do it and compete and be competitive. In other words, like Richie and Pete, they're both well sponsored. I think they have supportive families. Ryan, his parents work at the Iditarod, the Iditarod headquarters there in Wasilla and Kinnick. Every day they're in there rubbing shoulders with Mark Nordman. And it's like I worked with Ryan when I was younger. He's clearly someone who's very enthusiastic about the sport and mushing and stuff like that. And absolutely, all three of those guys, they've got a lot of experience at this point. They've run the race a lot, and just on the amount of time that they've put into it, it's expected for them to be competitive out there. So not taking away in any shape or form from their accomplishment, but remarking and questioning, how that ecosystem of business, specifically in light of the Hugh Neff not being able to run this year, Hugh Neff being competitive last year going into Ruby, and what we've seen with the antics with like Brent Sass being pulled out years ago with the iPod from Nordman, and sort of the politicization that we saw with the CV controversy with the trail committee, and going back and forth with Dallas, and just like I don't think